you want to some views?
I was just views because Sue in Cheshire, I think you make a very good point, Sue. She says, I only hope that when Kwasi does his speech this afternoon, not only says that they will stay the course, as we know he will, but also explain why they are doing what they are doing. I think that's what people need, Sue.
Well, that's what Liz Truss was saying over the weekend, that she acknowledged that she'd failed to lay the groundwork. And, you know, you could agree probably with that. John in Blythe Valley says, another general election, the key is surely whether or not a new PM commits to following the manifesto that they were elected on. Liz Truss has thrown it in the bin. She has no mandate. The Tories must replace her ASAP with someone who will disown her crazy political experiment.
Meanwhile, Jan says people that earn an extortionate amount of money pay an extortionate amount of tax anyway. So I don't object to the top rate of tax cut. I just think the timing could have been better and should have been in conjunction with raising the lower limit before you start paying any tax.
Yeah.
There you go.
Keep the thoughts coming in. We love to hear from you, and we're now going to bring you our paper review. So we're joined today by the lovely journalist Dawn Neeson and former advisor very lovely, and former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Redrop. Welcome back to the programme. You were with us for a little while before you got snapped up by Boris earlier in the year, but pleased to have you back. So shall we start with you, Oscar? You've chosen the front of the Daily Mail, but I have to say he's on most of the front pages in some form or other, and that is Michael Gove, after he decided to stick the knife into Liz Truss's plans yesterday.
Well, yeah, I mean, so Michael Gove is, I think, almost universally viewed, and I think quite rightly, as being one of the brightest, efficient minds in the party, and almost the stage management of her interview that she gave on Sunday, with him kind of just sitting just off camera and commenting on it directly afterwards, was quite remarkable and quite dramatic. I think what we're hearing actually is that there is going to be a U-turn on the 45p top rate of tax. How that's then framed, I think is quite interesting. Is it like a delay, or are they actually just going to hold their hands up and do a full screeching U-turn? And the pressure that he's been applying will 100% have contributed to that.
So you would attribute any possible U-turn specifically to a sort of galvanised rebellion by Michael Gove?
Well, I mean, I do actually have a great deal of empathy with the Prime Minister, because, you know, you remember, you know, a lot of people wanted drastic action on the economy.
Well, she wrote a book about it, so it surprises what she's doing.
Exactly, and you know, throughout the whole hustings process, and you know, that was the kind of the ticket she was on. It hasn't quite worked, and I think that, you know, part of that, and there's so many audiences that she's playing to now, which obviously the markets was the first one, the public, of course, when they kind of caught wind of the changes that are being proposed, and then actually the MPs, and you forget that she didn't bring in people into the cabinet who didn't particularly back her during that leadership campaign. And then when you see them outside the tent, Gove, Shapps as well was out and about, kind of, it causes you really, really damaging problem.
Yeah, but Michael Gove's now developing a reputation as a professional backstabber, isn't he?
Well, I mean, there were arguments about whether that happened, of course, during Boris's reign. I mean, I would be a little bit more generous than that. I think you see all the time kind of anonymous briefing in politics. I think ultimately you do have to at least have a degree of respect for someone who will put his face to his beliefs. And
he did make a few compliments to the Prime Minister in that, as you say, extraordinary set piece yesterday, saying things like she was very authoritative and did her best to make her case. But you're absolutely right though. You know, he did make the point. This is unconservative, and
yeah, it's just really quickly. It's kind of a fairness thing, and you have to remember, like, these MPs, they have to go to their constituencies and they have to say, look, you may work on trains, you may be a nurse. We can't give you the pay rise, inflation, death spiral, all that kind of stuff that we were talking about during the summer. However, bankers, bonuses, and we're scrappy. You know, it just doesn't work on the doorstep.
Go on, Dawn. What do you think?
I want to ask Oscar, as a former advisor to Boris, what Boris is making all of this. Is he sitting there in the background going, yes,
of course he is.
Of course he is. Or is he concerned?
Not that easy after all.
It's like you always want someone who succeeds you in your job to be slightly worse than you, don't you? You know, make them look good. Go on.
It's a very fair question. I think the boring answer I would give, but there is...
No, the exciting...
Yeah.
Well, the exciting answer potentially, but the truth here is, you know, he was someone very, very impassioned by levelling up the country, and I think he'll want what's best for those communities. I think, you know, the fairness question, I mean, he is someone who would not have abolished that top rate of tax, I don't believe. And I think he'll just want to see the communities that never voted Tory before, that felt left behind, treading water, he'll just want what's best for them.
Fairness when it comes to tax, though, is a very difficult issue. Because people who earn less money always will say, well, it's not fair if someone who earns more money gets a benefit. But as Jan says, those who earn an extortionate amount of money pay an extortionate amount of tax anyway. I mean, a fair system in that sense would be flat tax, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, your viewers and the Vox Pops you did earlier in the show as well is the really important thing that you do sometimes have to remind yourself at number 10. It can feel like a submarine almost, and you kind of, you have to always take a step back and remember like the common sense of voters. And I think because they didn't explain the budget, they didn't kind of use human stories about what this will mean for a working family. Not throwing numbers at people, but just their day-to-day lives, what tax breaks mean and what the strategy would actually mean for people individually. That didn't happen.
Well, also the energy guarantee, which was a huge deal, completely got overshadowed in all of this. And in many ways, again, feel sorry for them in that regard, but just terrible. Who's advising? Who's our special advisors?
But this is the whole point, though, of how important communications and advisors are. And we were talking, Oscar and I were talking about this earlier, and I think Jan's actually nailed it. I don't think it's the tax cut per se. It's the fact they didn't explain how they were going to fund it, where the money was coming from, because your knee-jerk reaction is, oh my God, it's the rich that are going to get the pleasure, the poor get the pain again. They didn't explain how they were going to fund it, and they didn't really seem to communicate with anyone around them. I mean, you know, and this sort of like, you know, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. And Liz Truss has surrounded herself, and the Gove thing proves that even more so, surrounded herself by Team Liz. What she should have brought was Team Rishi on side. I mean, Gove was a Rishi supporter, wasn't he? I mean, originally it was Kemi Badenoch he supported, but he jumped to support Rishi. So,
but you ask whether or not Boris is relishing all of this. You do wonder if Rishi Sunak's also, you know,
he'll
not
be
going to
relishing it.
conference. He's totally vindicated,
they're
isn't
going
he?
to be, aren't they?
Does all this mean that Truss is finished?
Well,
According
according to the Daily Mirror, who would really like to see this happen, obviously, given they are a left-leaning paper, Truss is finished. Not even a question mark. Basically, this is obviously the Tory party conference has kicked off in Birmingham today, and this is a senior Tory backbencher, which could actually be Michael Gove at the moment.
Well, yeah.
That's what I mean about the anonymous brief.
Exactly, who's remaining
I
anonymous.
suspect that Michael Gove doesn't mind putting his name to his
No, I know, but it's another senior anonymous Tory backbencher who's saying that, you know, she doesn't sort this mess out, she is out by Christmas, which would give us the 5th Tory leader in 6 years. I mean, seriously, no, what look is that?
Has
I mean,
to be a
even if
general
you're Boris or
election in
Gove,
that,
you can't surely want that. But as Oscar was just saying, there is the rumour coming out that it will be announced of a screeching U-turn, I think it could be described as, on the 45p tax rate. But I mean, you know, there was a lot of uncomfortableness about where the party's going. But, you know, on the other side of
She
things...
has also said she's not bothered about being popular at this
that was
stage.
the very first thing she said, wasn't it, Stephen, was, I appreciate that I am going to make some unpopular decisions and really I'm going to have to live with it. Not sure she quite foresaw it being
32-point lead to the Labour Party in the polls.
But the thing is with this, I mean, the Labour Party are also incredibly divided. I saw a tweet this morning from someone quite high up in the Labour Party going, well, the left wing of the party are fine, but the right wing, and I'm not going to use the language they use, but not nice people. And it's like, now, all of us are going, a general election, I mean, seriously, both main parties are hideously divided. I mean...
But you see, this is, I hate to say it, because I know a lot of politicians and a lot of them are wonderful people, very nice, decent people, but this highlights sometimes the stupidity of some of those, isn't it? If members of the Labour Party, when they're in a prime position, are being critical of members of their own party, we see it in the Tory party as well. No wonder we all get fed up with it.
Well, exactly. It's the optics of it. But it's like, you know, talking of the conferences, the one thing that did disturb me over the weekend was the amount of abuse and vitriol and physical assault that was going on of our MPs.
Really glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, and you saying, Stephen, that, you know, some of them quite quite a few of them, are actually do very good jobs. They do want to do the right thing for their constituents. And, it's with, David Amis we lost, Joe Cox we lost. And some of the abuse now being aimed at our politicians, I find, and the physical abuse you've seen aimed at Jacob Rees-Mogg in particular, and Fabricant, wasn't it, going into the toilet, it worries me. I think we need to step back a bit from some of the rhetoric going on.
Yeah, no.
Thoughts on that, Oscar?
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I get that these are scary times for people, and I think just going back to we get fed up of politicians. I think this is across all parties. I think sometimes the general public, they want their politicians to feel like human beings, and I feel like because of that kind of abuse we saw the other day, I think that's why, why does our MP look like a robot? Why don't I feel like a connection? I feel it's because they put that wall up. So I think there's a trade-off there that probably needs to be worked on.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a look at the Times, Oscar, and the threat from Putin to use nuclear weapons may not be a bluff, says the Times.
Well, I remember, I think it was maybe the last time I was on the show with you guys, before the invasion actually took place, and a lot of people at the time were saying, it's a deferred threat thing, I don't think he actually means this invasion, and as we saw, obviously, he very much did. It's a real juggling act in terms of dealing with someone who doesn't quite seem in his right mind and is quite a malevolent tyrant in many ways, and how serious you take those threats. But I think you kind of have to. Hearing them talking about moving over to like cyber attacks, and maybe that's the more realistic threat actually.
Or chemical.
Exactly. You have to take this so seriously, but when you take it seriously, you can't let it. When we talk about all our domestic issues as well, it is easy to kind of maybe think, oh, do we take our foot off the gas a bit here? And I would just urge people, and I think part of Boris's legacy it absolutely stands this up in, like, we cannot let up in our support for Ukraine.
Just on Boris's legacy, and I don't know if you guys have followed much of Tim Shipman over the weekend, but he was inferring that Liz Truss was desperate to get on the first plane out to Ukraine to try and build on Boris's successes in Ukraine, to try and distract from some of her domestic problems. Do you think that was probably a true scenario that was going on in Downing Street?
That was the one thing. So I think I don't think anyone in Downing Street, in terms of their relationship with the media, and took things particularly personally. Like the scrutiny and the pressure that comes with it. The one thing that I'm just speaking, just personally, that I really disliked that view that Boris was doing
Cynical
it.
View.
I really genuinely, that was the one thing that got me sometimes. That I did dislike. I saw a prime minister and a man who absolutely was completely exercised by the need to protect and offer support, and him and President Zelensky, they had a genuine bond.
But do you see that in Truss as well?
I see absolutely no reason why not that can't continue at all. Boris doesn't necessarily own that. I don't think he'd want to own that. I think, absolutely no reason why not.
What are young people fearing, according to
pretty much everything.
Well, I was going to say, off the back of that.
If they're reading the papers as well, I mean, on the upside, nuclear war will stop you having a general election. Basically, this is The Guardian, and they've got a leaked report that's been given to them, and it's a poll of 2,000 young people by the Prince's Trust, 16 to 25-year-olds, and more than a third of young people feel that life is spiralling out of control. Well, we all do, don't we? You don't have to be young to do that at the moment. And it's basically, it's a campaign that's highlighting COVID's impact on that younger generation, who really did suffer, didn't they? I mean, it's like, they feel like half of them, on the upside, half of them surveyed did say they felt more resilient because of what they've been through.
But the youth need to be more resilient, I think.
Spoken like a granddad.
Didn't he say
youth of today?
Long in the tooth.
No, but
all young in my day.
Today, Stephen, honestly.
What, does anybody actually
Does
anybody here disagree with me?
No.
Well, there you go.
As a young person,
hold on,
Just about, on this table, I guess. Yeah.
How old are you?
That's very rude.
That's very
It's not a rude question at all.
I'm in my mid to late 20s.
Right, well, that's fair enough.
you might actually just
I feel a lot older after the last year there.
Any Oscar, this might be one for you then. On the upside as well, you feel more determined to achieve in life?
I mean, I'm quite, after the last year of working at Number 10, I'm putting my feet up a little bit, I have to say. But in time.
But
definitely.
also,
Yeah.
you missed out on your first kiss.
Did I?
Did you?
Evidently, this is what this poll's saying. And
Oh, I thought like you'd done some... got very nervous.
Got that one wrong,
These young people felt their social interactions, finding a partner, were interrupted by COVID, and a lot of them missed out on their first kiss.
Well, can they not do it virtually? I mean,
Yeah, but do you know what?
people of our age all kissed a Grattan catalogue at some point, didn't they?
What? No, Stephen, sorry, that was just you.
That's just me.
Which particular section were you kissing?
Well, mind your own business.
Can I just say, sorry, just rewinding. Sorry, so there's a whole generation of people that have missed out on their first kiss and haven't made up for it since. So therefore, feel like they've missed the boat on their
It's
first.
never happened.
So then they've suddenly got the fear or something.
It doesn't go into. Well, I think what.
You made up for that at university, didn't you?
You're
No,
being very rude.
that's what you do at university, isn't it?
What did you do at university?
Oh, I had lots of first kisses.
There you go. I don't.
Ad break.
Couldn't possibly comment. Great, good idea. This is a special advisor. No, look, we're going to talk about hospital appointments. So have we got to move on? How are we doing for time? Someone help me. We've got 30 seconds. Let's quickly talk about hospital appointments. Feels like I might need one in a minute.
No, so this is absolutely related. I can't quite remember the figure, but I think it's something like
22,000 every day.
22,000.
A day.
So, on a very serious note, that has to be a government priority
Yeah.
in terms of clearing that backlog. Whenever we spoke about levelling up, and whatever the government's kind of messaging when it comes into place, moving forward with the new administration, people will not take levelling up and life improvement seriously if they are repeatedly having their doctor's appointments cancelled. It's an absolute basic.
Well, this
the
is
government will be working.
This is the problem we've got. We've got 6.8 million people on the waiting list, and I've got one in my family at the moment. Hopefully, good luck this afternoon with your hospital appointment. And we have had Sajid Javid, Steve Barclay, and now Therese Coffey. I mean, this is what you get with changing people in a job every 5
But
minutes.
you'll know because you're going through it, the stress that actually causes. You know, the anxiety that it causes.
Yeah, and it was. Yeah, I mean, this appointment in particular is for a fairly important thing that's been cancelled twice already as well. So it's sharp.
Well, good luck this afternoon for whoever that is in Team Neeson. And we're going to take a little break from the papers, back with Dawn and with Oscar at about 20 to 8-ish.
It's 7.
Thereabouts.
No, yes, 8.
Yes.
What day is it?
It's 10 to 7 though.